Have you ever felt completely powerless? Like the entire world was against you, crushing your beliefs, your identity, your soul? Have you ever looked at an impossible challenge and felt that familiar knot in your stomach, telling you to give up before you even try? Today, we're diving deep into the mind of a man who faced the ultimate psychological warfare. A man who watched his people's sacred traditions being destroyed, their temple desecrated, and their children forced to abandon everything they held dear. Yet somehow, from this place of absolute despair, he found the inner strength to not just survive, but to lead one of history's most remarkable comebacks. This is the psychological journey of Judah Maccabee, and by understanding his mental battles, you'll discover the same psychological weapons that can transform your own life from defeat to victory. Imagine you're born into a world where your grandfather's stories of freedom feel like fairy tales. Your father tells you about a time when your people practiced their faith openly, when their temple was the center of community life, when being who you were wasn't a crime punishable by death. This was Judah's reality. Born into the priestly family of Mattathias around 190 BCE, Judah inherited more than just a bloodline. He inherited generations of accumulated trauma. The psychological weight of living under foreign oppression had already begun to reshape his people's collective psyche. But here's what makes Judah's story so relevant to your life today. He didn't just inherit trauma, he inherited the responsibility to do something about it. And this is where the first psychological battle began. Imagine growing up knowing that everyone around you expects you to be the solution to problems that existed long before you were born. Your father looks at you with hope in his eyes. Your community whispers about prophecies and liberation. The pressure is suffocating. This is the first psychological war that shapes great leaders. The battle between inherited expectations and personal identity. Judah had to wrestle with a fundamental question that many of you face today. Am I living my own life, or am I just trying to fulfill other people's dreams? The psychological toll of this burden manifests in different ways. Some people crumble under the weight and spend their lives trying to escape their destiny. Others become paralyzed by the fear of failure, never taking action because the stakes feel too high. But the truly great ones, like Judah, learn to transform this pressure into fuel. In 167 BCE, everything changed. Antiochus IV Epiphanes, the Seleucid king, didn't just conquer Judah's homeland. He launched a systematic psychological assault designed to erase their identity completely. Think about the most important things in your life: your values, your traditions, the activities that give your life meaning. Now imagine someone with absolute power declaring all of these things illegal, not just discouraged, punishable by death. Antiochus understood something that modern psychologists have confirmed. The fastest way to break a people's spirit is to attack their sense of identity. He banned circumcision, Sabbath observance, and Torah study. He forced Jews to eat pork and participate in Greek religious ceremonies. He placed a statue of Zeus in the Jerusalem temple and sacrificed pigs on the sacred altar. This wasn't just political oppression. This was psychological warfare designed to create what we now call learned helplessness. When people are repeatedly subjected to situations they cannot control, they often stop trying altogether, even when escape becomes possible. Judah watched his community begin to fracture. Some of his neighbors chose collaboration, adopting Greek customs to survive. Others chose passive resistance, accepting martyrdom rather than compromise. Many simply retreated into despair, becoming shadows of their former selves. But Judah's psychological response was different. Instead of helplessness, he experienced what psychologists call righteous anger, a powerful emotional state that occurs when our deepest values are threatened. This anger became the catalyst for everything that followed. The breaking point came when Judah witnessed his father, Mattathias, refuse to sacrifice to pagan gods. When a fellow Jew stepped forward to comply with the king's order, Mattathias killed both the collaborator and the king's officer, then destroyed the altar. In that moment, watching his elderly father risk everything for principle, Judah faced a psychological crossroads that each of you will encounter in your own life. The moment when you must choose between safety and authenticity, between survival and significance. This is where most people's stories end, in comfortable compromise. But Judah's psychological makeup was different. He had developed what researchers call a growth mindset. The belief that abilities and circumstances can be changed through effort and strategy. After his father's death, Judah inherited leadership of a ragtag group of rebels hiding in caves. The psychological challenges he faced would have broken most people. He was outnumbered, outgunned, and had no formal military training. His followers were farmers and craftsmen, not soldiers. They had no allies, no supplies, and no apparent path to victory. But here's where Judah's psychological genius revealed itself. Instead of being overwhelmed by the impossibility of his situation, he broke it down into manageable psychological battles. The first psychological enemy Judah had to defeat wasn't external. It was the scarcity mindset that had infected his own thinking. When you've lived under oppression for generations, you develop a poverty mentality. You start believing that there's never enough, not enough resources, not enough time, not enough power to make a difference. Judah recognized that this mindset was more dangerous than any enemy army. He began to reframe every limitation as an opportunity. No formal army? That meant they could move fast and strike unexpectedly. No supplies? That meant they would learn to live off the land and capture what they needed from enemies. No allies? That meant they would become so successful that allies would come to them. This psychological shift from scarcity to abundance thinking is perhaps the most crucial transformation any aspiring leader must make. And it's available to you right now, regardless of your circumstances. But reframing limitations wasn't enough. Judah needed to build genuine confidence in himself and his followers. He understood that confidence isn't about feeling good. It's about having evidence that you can handle whatever comes your way. So Judah started small. Instead of immediately attacking major strongholds, he led raids against small outposts. Each small victory became psychological ammunition, building a track record of success that would sustain them through future defeats. This is a crucial lesson for your own psychological development. Confidence is built through accumulated evidence, not positive thinking. Every time you keep a small promise to yourself, every time you face a minor fear and push through it, you're building the psychological foundation for handling bigger challenges. Perhaps most importantly, Judah achieved something that modern psychology recognizes as essential for sustained motivation: crystal clear purpose. He wasn't fighting just to win battles. He was fighting to restore his people's right to exist as themselves. This level of purpose clarity creates what psychologists call flow state, a mental condition where a person becomes fully immersed in an activity with complete focus and energy. When your purpose is clear and personally meaningful, obstacles become puzzles to solve rather than reasons to quit. Judah's psychological brilliance really emerged in how he approached military strategy. He didn't try to fight like a conventional army because he understood that the real battle was happening in minds, not just on battlefields. Judah pioneered tactics that were designed as much to demoralize enemies as to defeat them militarily. His forces would appear suddenly, strike hard, and vanish before reinforcements could arrive. They would attack supply lines, making large armies question their ability to maintain operations. They would target collaborators, making cooperation with the occupiers psychologically costly. But the psychological masterstroke was how Judah used symbolism. Every victory, no matter how small, was framed as proof that the God of their ancestors was fighting alongside them. This wasn't just propaganda. It was psychological architecture designed to transform his followers' self-concept from victims to victors. What many people don't realize is that Judah himself faced constant psychological pressure that would have crushed most leaders. He was responsible for hundreds of lives. Every decision could mean the difference between freedom and genocide for his entire people. The weight of this responsibility creates what psychologists call decision fatigue, a mental state where the quality of decisions deteriorates due to the sheer volume of choices required. Judah developed several psychological strategies to manage this pressure. He created clear decision-making frameworks based on his core values, reducing the mental energy required for each choice. He delegated tactical decisions to trusted lieutenants while maintaining strategic oversight. Most importantly, he developed rituals and practices that helped him stay connected to his deeper purpose when the stress threatened to overwhelm him. The Maccabean revolt lasted for years, not months. During this time, Judah faced defeats that would have ended most rebellions. His brothers were killed in battle. His forces were scattered multiple times. There were periods when victory seemed impossible and surrender looked rational. But Judah had developed what researchers now call grit, a combination of passion and perseverance toward long-term goals. Grit isn't about never falling down. It's about always getting back up with lessons learned and determination intact. Each setback became data rather than defeat. Each loss became an opportunity to refine strategy rather than a reason to quit. This psychological resilience, the ability to maintain effort and interest despite failures, adversity, and plateaus in progress, is perhaps the most important trait that separates those who achieve greatness from those who remain average. By 164 BCE, something remarkable had happened in Judah's psychology and in the psychology of his movement. They had stopped thinking like victims fighting for survival and started thinking like conquerors fighting for destiny. This psychological transformation didn't happen overnight. It was the result of accumulated victories, refined strategies, and most importantly, a fundamental shift in identity. Judah and his followers no longer saw themselves as oppressed people fighting against inevitable defeat. They saw themselves as the rightful inheritors of their homeland, temporarily displaced but ultimately destined to reclaim what was theirs. Psychologists have identified something called the success spiral, a positive feedback loop where small wins create the confidence and energy needed to tackle bigger challenges, which create bigger wins, which create even more confidence. Judah had successfully initiated this spiral, and it was becoming unstoppable. But momentum creates its own psychological challenges. Success can breed overconfidence. Victory can make you forget the strategies and mindset that created the victory in the first place. Judah had to learn to manage success psychologically, which is often harder than managing failure. As Judah prepared for the assault on Jerusalem, he faced the greatest psychological challenge of his entire journey. Everything he had fought for, everything his people had suffered for, would be decided in the coming battle. The psychological pressure was enormous, but by this point, Judah had developed what modern psychology calls mastery orientation, a mindset focused on learning, improving, and overcoming challenges rather than just looking good or avoiding failure. He approached the siege of Jerusalem not as a desperate gamble, but as the natural culmination of years of preparation and growth. When Judah finally led his forces towards Jerusalem in 164 BCE, the physical battle was almost anticlimactic. The real victory had already happened in the realm of psychology and mindset. Judah had created something that military strategists call psychological inevitability, a mental state where victory feels predestined rather than possible. His followers weren't hoping to win, they were expecting to win. This confidence was so complete that it became contagious, affecting even their enemies. The Seleucid forces defending Jerusalem were no longer fighting confident conquerors. They were fighting desperate defenders trying to hold on to something that no longer felt like theirs. The psychological momentum had completely reversed. When Judah's forces finally entered the temple, they found it desecrated and defiled, just as they had expected. But their psychological response revealed how completely they had transformed. Instead of despair at the destruction, they felt energized by the opportunity to restore. Instead of anger at the sacrilege, they felt joy at the chance to rebuild. This is the ultimate psychological victory, when external circumstances no longer control your internal state. When your sense of identity and purpose is so strong that temporary setbacks become opportunities rather than defeats. The cleansing and rededication of the temple became one of history's great psychological victories. In just 8 days, Judah and his followers transformed a symbol of defeat into a symbol of triumph, a reminder of oppression into a celebration of liberation. Judah Maccabee's story isn't just ancient history, it's a psychological blueprint for overcoming impossible odds in your own life. The mental battles he fought and won are the same battles you face every day. Like Judah's people under Antiochus, you live in a world that constantly tries to convince you that change is impossible, that the system is too big, that individual action doesn't matter. The first psychological war you must win is the battle against learned helplessness, the belief that you are powerless to change your circumstances. Judah's example shows us that this battle is won not through positive thinking, but through small, consistent actions that prove to yourself that you do have power. Every time you choose to act rather than accept, every time you take responsibility rather than make excuses, you're fighting the same psychological war that Judah fought. The second psychological war is against scarcity thinking, the belief that there isn't enough success, opportunity, or resources to go around. This mindset keeps you playing defense instead of offense, protecting what you have instead of creating what you want. Judah transformed his followers from people who thought in terms of survival to people who thought in terms of abundance. He showed them that limitations could become advantages, that disadvantages could become opportunities, that being the underdog could become a source of strength rather than shame. The third psychological war is the battle for identity clarity, knowing who you are and what you stand for regardless of external pressure. Judah's people were under intense pressure to abandon their identity and assimilate into Greek culture. The psychological pressure to conform, to fit in, to avoid standing out is something you face every day. Judah's victory teaches us that authentic identity isn't about being stubborn or closed-minded. It's about being so clear on your core values that you can adapt your tactics while never compromising your principles. The fourth psychological war is the battle to align your actions with your deepest sense of purpose. Most people spend their lives reacting to circumstances rather than creating the circumstances they want. They let external events determine their internal state rather than using their internal state to influence external events. Judah shows us what becomes possible when you reverse this dynamic, when your sense of purpose becomes so strong that it shapes reality rather than being shaped by it. Judah Maccabee's psychological arsenal isn't ancient history. These are tools you can use right now to transform your own life from defeat to victory. The first weapon is righteous anger, not the destructive rage that tears things down, but the constructive anger that builds things up. This is the emotional fuel that powers lasting change. When you get angry enough at your own mediocrity, at the gap between who you are and who you could become, at the difference between your current results and your true potential, that anger becomes rocket fuel for transformation. The second weapon is strategic thinking, the ability to see beyond immediate circumstances to ultimate possibilities. Judah never let tactical defeats distract him from strategic victory. He understood that every battle was just one move in a larger game. You can develop this same strategic mindset by regularly stepping back from daily problems to remember your long-term vision. Every setback becomes data for course correction rather than evidence for giving up. The third weapon is identity-based action, making decisions based on who you're becoming rather than who you've been. Judah didn't act like a victim fighting for survival. He acted like a leader destined for victory. His actions flowed from his identity rather than his circumstances. You can use this same weapon by asking yourself, what would the person I'm becoming do in this situation? Then do that, even if you don't feel like it yet. The fourth weapon is momentum creation, the ability to turn small wins into bigger wins through strategic sequencing. Judah didn't start by attacking Jerusalem. He started with small victories that built the confidence and capability needed for bigger challenges. You can create your own success spiral by identifying the smallest possible version of your goal and achieving it consistently before moving to the next level. Judah Maccabee's story proves that the greatest battles are won in the mind before they're won in the world. His psychological conquest of fear, doubt, and learned helplessness created the foundation for his physical conquest of Jerusalem. The same psychological weapons that Judah used over 2,000 years ago are available to you today. The same mental battles he fought and won are the battles you must fight and win in your own life. The question isn't whether you have what it takes. Judah started with less than you have now. The question isn't whether change is possible. Judah proved that even impossible odds can be overcome with the right psychological approach. The only question is whether you're ready to stop being a victim of your circumstances and start being the author of your destiny. Whether you're ready to stop reacting to life and start creating it. Whether you're ready to transform your own psychological state from survival to conquest. Judah Maccabee's greatest victory wasn't the liberation of Jerusalem. It was the liberation of his own mind from the limitations that once defined him. That same liberation is available to you starting right now. The psychological war for your own greatness begins the moment you decide that your current circumstances are not your final destination. The moment you choose purpose over comfort, growth over safety, action over excuses. Your Jerusalem is waiting. Your psychological conquest begins now. What will you choose?